I see our numbers are climbing upward, and I really want to get into this discussion, so we'll begin. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Matthew Tenbruggencade. I'm a communications officer with the International Institute for Sustainable Development. IISD is headquartered in Winnipeg, Chile, Winnipeg, Canada. We are situated on Treaty 1 territory, the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, the Ininu, the Anisininu, the Dene and Dakota nations, and the homeland of the Red River Métis Nation. Thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar, Renewable Energy and Sustainable Land Management. A few housekeeping notes. The session is being recorded, and we are going to be sharing the recording link with everybody who registered, and then, of course, to a wider audience. We encourage you to share that. But yes, you can rest assured you'll get a copy of the recording. The chat is open. We love the energy and the quality of comments that we get during the chat. Please be respectful, of course, but feel free to introduce yourself and share your perspective there. There will be a Q&A towards the end of the webinar. And if you have a question, you can obviously put it in the chat, but to really bring it to our attention, use the Q&A function within Zoom. That's at the bottom middle of your screen. And that's a great way to make sure that we see that. We have an absolutely outstanding panel that you're going to be hearing from just shortly, and they are going to be talking about findings from a report that was published late last year, a natural fit, renewable energy and sustainable land management. This was a co-produced report with IISD, UNCCD, and UNU-VIE, and generously supported by the European Union, and we're so grateful for that report. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and it's my great pleasure right now to invite the Deputy Executive Secretary of the UNCCD to join us, Andrea Meza Murillo. It's so wonderful to have you today. We know your time is precious, so please start us off with your reflections on this intersection of renewable energy and sustainable land management.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon to everyone, or good morning, depending on which part of the world you are. It's really my pleasure, and I'm delighted to be with all of you to give some initial reflections to kick off this panel and this session that I'm sure will generate a lot of interesting ideas and food for thought for the incoming COPs that we will have this year. We will have the 3 Rio Convention COPs, among other COPs, happening this year. And this conversation, it's very important to start understanding why we need to see this in a systemic way. And by this, what I'm trying to bring to the table is the idea that every time that we're seeing the deployment of these technologies of renewable energy, which is clearly a very important process that needs to be consolidated to achieve the 1.5 goal, and that we're seeing that makes a lot of economic sense, we also need to think in how to do it in ways that could also have positive impact on achieving SDGs. And the case on guaranteeing energy access, I think, is clear. It can really be a powerful tool to guarantee energy access in very remote areas of the world, especially in Africa, where we know that this is a must, a need to guarantee access to energy. But also, there are ways in which we can deploy these technologies in the different landscapes, in different rural landscapes, where we need to start seeing how to make it in a way that it is also beneficial to guarantee food security, water security, and also how to do this in ways that we can reduce the impact on biodiversity. And it seems like a challenge, and it is becoming a challenge. In many parts of the world, we start hearing some communities talking about the impact, the visual impact, but other impacts related to the deployment of these technologies. But our view of seeing this is that it is possible to reduce these impacts And it is possible to have positive impacts actually in other areas if we do this in a very integrated manner and we start putting in place these integrated land use plans, considering these as part also of the strategy when we are thinking in deploying some of these technologies. I think it's very important then to understand this interconnection among the three Rio Conventions and the objectives that they are trying to achieve, and the system approach. We always say that we cannot achieve climate and biodiversity goals if we don't understand and we don't make a correct land management, land restoration, and land conservation. And this is related as well with the development goals. It is not about saying if we should go one way or the other. It's about integrated everything and give coherence to the different impacts. So it is possible to have a sustainable development model. And clearly, renewable energy and these technologies will play a critical role to achieve this kind of models, to guarantee that we can operate within planetary boundaries. But for this, we really need to make sure that we are using the right approach, this integrated land use planning, and to really then have conversations with the rural communities, understanding their needs. And I just would like to share, some personal experiences. I had the privilege to visit China a couple of years ago, and I went to the Kobuchi Desert. And I was so impressed to see the way that they were putting these solar farms, but at the same time producing food under these solar farms in very interesting ways. The way that they were integrating food production with the solar technologies, I was absolutely amazed. And I think that this is the way when we're talking about how to be operating in these different rural landscapes. And the other experience, of course, that comes to my mind is coming from my country. I'm from Costa Rica, and as you know, we have been producing our electricity mostly coming from renewable sources. And in our case, it's a lot of hydropower on one side. But this generated a lot of debates as well with the conservation community in many years because of the impacts of some of these projects. And this is where a lot of this planning to understand that, yes, sometimes we can deploy and start certain projects in certain areas, but in others we cannot because there are protected areas. This idea of understanding how to integrate them in the different rural landscapes became a very important way on addressing. And the other element was, how do we generate as well good social and economic benefits for the communities that are then around these different projects? And if we manage to come with solutions for this, I think that this is what we will call a win-win situation. And I just hope that with this conversation and as well with the publication, we can start continuing and enhancing the ideas, the innovations, and also the strategies that we need to put in place to make this happen. I want to close by thanking IISD, IRENA, UNU, and of course, the European Union for the support and for being partners in crime for this. And I hope that this is a productive conversation that you will have. Over.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you so much for these opening remarks. My name is Stefan Jungcurt. I'm a project lead with IISD. And over the last few months, I had the pleasure to work with colleagues from UNCCD, UNU, IRENA, and many other institutions, and also my colleagues at IISD to pull this report together. And I must say, it I was very impressed about the speed of the research that is happening in some of these areas. So it's a very timely report, not only in the context of the renewable energy transition, but also the research the research sphere is really picking up on this issue. I'm going to quickly introduce the other panelists. Matt, if you could put that slide back on, and then I'll give a quick overview of the report before I invite my colleagues to share their perspectives as well. I'm joined today by Barron Joseph Orr, who is the chief scientist of UNCCD and who is also one of the initiators of this report at this point. And then we'll also have Emmanuel Cheo, who is with the United Nations University at the Vice Directorate for Europe. And then last but not least, we'll have Jinlei Feng, who is a program officer with IRENA. And I'd just like to mention these three distinguished experts sort of represent a group of more than 25 people who have contributed to this report. So it's been really a great pleasure to work with so many really knowledgeable experts on pulling this together. Now, coming back to what Andrea just mentioned, we are the starting point for this. It really is a good news story, right? We're seeing that renewable energy technologies are becoming more and more competitive and become more viable in more areas in the world. So from a climate perspective, we're finally seeing the energy transition to pick up pace. But of course, as we're doing this, we have to be careful that we're not creating problems in other areas. And one of those areas is the concern that renewable energy technologies tend, on average, to use or have a higher land footprint than other energy. So the starting point really was here to say, how can we make sure that the expansion of renewable energy does not come at the expense of sustainable land management and our efforts to halt land degradation globally. So I will focus here just quickly sort of on the main aspects of the report in terms of, how big is the problem? What are the footprints that the different renewable energy technologies have? And then what are the main strategies that countries, organizations, industry, and stakeholders can use to make sure that the installation of new renewable energy installations does not lead to land degradation. So Matt, if you can please go to the next slide, we'll jump right in with sort of, or it's probably most important graphs of the report. Is on the comparison of the land footprint of different types of energy. Now, there's a lot of things to say around this graph. Maybe the first and most important thing is this is based on one of the few studies that we found that use actual installations of renewable energy to make this estimate. So we're not looking at modeling here. But the very first thing to say is that, of course, the conditions vary a lot, and there's a huge amount of variance in installations in different parts of the world under different conditions. And maybe the second thing to say is we're looking here at the land use intensity of energy, which is measuring equivalent amounts of energy output over a given time frame. So we're looking here at the amount of hectares that are needed to produce 1 terawatt hour of electricity per year. 1 terawatt hour, that's 1 billion kilowatt hours, or you can charge an average electric car 1 million times with that amount of energy. So we've included sort of the fact that renewable energy don't always produce energy, but the value of the intermittency or the fact that sometimes you need baseload energy is not included in the graph here. Further, what is included in this estimate here is the amount of land that is used to produce fuel for non-renewable energies, so coal mining and gas wells. But what is not included is the land that is being affected by mining raw materials for the installations of the energy infrastructure. So this gives a slight advantage to renewable energies because renewable energy technologies need critical minerals that might need a bit more land for the mining. Now, the next thing to say also here is we are there, as you will see, for wind and gas, there's two estimates here. And that tries to take into account that, if you think about wind turbines, they need to be far apart in order to work efficiently. But the land between the wind turbines, depending on what the nature of the land is not necessarily affected by that. So it's better to maybe have those two footprints. And similar for natural gas, with the advent of fracking technology, we need more wells to produce natural gas, and these wells also need to be spaced out. So they have a similar issue here. But with all that in mind, what we can see here is that solar power, when you're looking at solar panels, on average uses about twice the amount of land that producing electricity from coal uses. For wind, as I said before, the actual land footprint is very large, but the land in between, 90% of the land, is available for other users depending on what the conditions are. And then when you're looking at the top here, we do have biomass included here in this graph. This is a little bit misleading because we're looking here at using biomass for electricity, which is not really done very often. Most times when biomass is grown for the purpose of creating energy, it's used for heating or for the creation of biofuels. So this is maybe not the best estimate to keep in mind here. And then when you look at the bottom, you can see that geothermal energy currently has the smallest footprint, but there were only a few examples that were included in the study here. This is partly because geothermal so far is restricted to certain areas, but there have been some very important technology breakthroughs recently that will probably make geothermal available in far more areas. Now, with all that in mind, this is kind of what we're looking at. There is a significant increase in land use when we're switching to renewable energy, but it's certainly manageable for most of the technologies that we're looking at. Maybe, Matt, if you can go to the next slide, please. So we've summarized the strategies that countries can use to ensure to align renewable energy expansion with sustainable land management into three broad buckets. And if you're familiar with the scientific work of the UNCCD, you will notice that we've tried to align it with the what's called the response hierarchy for land degradation. So into the categories avoiding land degradation through renewable energy, reducing land degradation, and reversing land degradation. So in the first category, avoiding land degradation, this is strategies where renewable energy installation is put on land that is already being used by other infrastructure or on land that has already been degraded. So what we're looking here, of course, the most common example here is putting solar panels on roofs of houses and factories. But solar panels can also be put on top of other infrastructure. So the examples you can see here is solar panels over a waterway in a city and over a train station. But there are also many other examples where solar panels can be located where they don't use up land. One really exciting recent innovation is floating solar panels that can be put on surfaces of reservoirs, so where hydro energy and solar energy can be combined in that way and together produce a more stable electricity supply. Then to the next slide, please. Looking at reducing the impact on land. This is mostly a category where we're looking at what you can call dual use strategies. So where renewable energy installation is integrated into other land uses. And in most cases, this will be different types of agriculture. And that bucket is called agrovoltaics usually. You can see here a couple of examples where we have the combination with crop production, with horticulture, with animal husbandry. And the overall strategy is here that solar panels do provide shade. They can help reduce water evaporation, and in that way create some beneficial effects. But of course, it does come at a yield penalty because we have less sunlight. So those solutions have to be fine-tuned. There's a number of other examples. We've been looking into sort of micro hydropower as well, where the impact on land is relatively small, but the energy that's been generated and available locally is sort of useful to increase agricultural sustainability. And then finally, there's also the use of waste and residue materials to create bioenergy, which as such does not require additional land, but can provide sustainable energy. Again, it comes with a caveat that we're not looking at electricity, so the discussion is a little bit different. And now going to the last strategy, Matt, please. So the last category is where renewable energy strategies can be integrated into efforts to restore land that has been degraded. And one very interesting strategy here is the harvesting of invasive alien species as a use for biomass. So in that way, you create a value for an activity that needs to be done in order to avoid further land degradation. This is, of course, only useful in some countries where invasive species are a massive problem at scale. I think South Africa is one country that is making some progress with that. But then other strategies can also include the cultivation of bioenergy crops on land that has been contaminated or degraded in other ways, or has been abandoned because it is no longer useful for agriculture and so on. Now, we do have a couple of case studies included in the presentation. I'll go through them very quickly here just to not move up too much, up too much time. We will share the slides afterwards, and you will have the link to the report to see these examples and others as well. But the first one here is a large-scale case study from China, where a large area, more than 4 square kilometers of land that was already degraded has been covered in solar panels that have also been used to support restoration of the land for agriculture. So this has produced both clean energy, but also new opportunities for people, for jobs, and sort of enhanced local food production. The second example here is the use of solar energy to power irrigation pumps. So this is one example of what's called productive uses of renewable energy. And the advantages here, of course, is that the pumps can replace diesel-powered pumps, so they reduce emission, but they also can provide access to energy in areas that were off-grid or hard to reach. And then very quickly, the third example we have here is kind of an integrated project of agrivoltaics that had a very strong focus on gender. So this project produced jobs primarily for women. And then one interesting aspect when you look at the graph here is that the solar panels were used in this case to collect rainwater and that you sort of use that water more precisely for irrigation in the future. And maybe last point here is that this is a fully integrated research project, which highlights again that a lot of these solutions can have tremendous benefits for people, for nature, for climate, if sort of the local knowledge and the local conditions are adequately considered here. So the key takeaway here is that, these solutions need to be co-produced and they really need to sort of grow out of the local conditions and the local demand. I'll leave it here, and maybe just before handing it over to Barron for his perspectives, I wanted to note that we, of course, as you know, we asked you to provide some questions when you registered, and 2 of the questions that were the most common was how do we avoid using agricultural land for renewable energy, and then the second question was also that was asked very often is what are your messages for policymakers? What are sort of the dangers of mistakes that policymakers can maybe make in this situation where things are happening rapidly? But also, what are some good experiences in terms of policies? So my request to all the 3 panelists is if you have any thoughts on these 2 questions, please include them in your reflections. But with that, I will hand over now to Barron. Barron, please, your reflections on the report.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And I also want to thank all the work that you and IISD did, as well as colleagues at UNU and UNCCD to produce the report. And we are also grateful for the contributions of reviewers around the world, including critical organizations like IRENA. You'll hear from them in a moment through Jinlei. So, dear colleagues, dear friends, as both Andrea and Stefan have expressed, with real-world examples, from the UNCCD perspective, meaning from the perspective of the Rio Convention that's focused on land, this report comes at exactly the right moment. Countries are trying to decarbonize their economies, meet rising energy demand, and at the same time deliver on the commitments under all 3 Rio conventions. The way we expand renewables will strongly influence whether we achieve land degradation neutrality and protect nature, biodiversity, climate all together. The good news is that renewable energy and sustainable land management are not in competition by default. They can be designed as partners. The LDN response hierarchy that Stefan introduced gives us a simple but powerful lens: avoid, reduce, and reverse land degradation as we deploy renewables. First, we can avoid new degradation. This means prioritizing solar, wind, and bioenergy on already converted or degraded land rather than converting new land for those purposes, pursuing it on rooftops, along transport corridors, and even on reservoirs through floating photovoltaics. In many countries, the area of degraded or marginal land is actually larger than the projected land needs for renewables. Using these areas can also reduce pressure on forests and rangelands now used for fuel wood and charcoal. Second, we can reduce degradation risks by embracing dual and multi-use systems: agrivoltaics, ecovoltaics, wind on rangelands can combine energy generation with crop production, grazing, and habitat conservation. Evidence shows that smartly designed agrivoltaic systems can improve water use efficiency, reduce heat stress on crops, and increase total output per hectare. This is especially important in dry lands and in drought-prone regions, which are occurring now in all parts of the world. Third, we can actively reverse degradation. Solar arrays can be used to create shade and windbreaks that help restore vegetation cover and soil health on formerly eroded land. Sustainable bioenergy on degraded or marginal land or based on invasive species can support restoration while providing reliable local energy. These approaches can turn so-called wastelands into productive, resilient landscapes. Across all three levels, we must manage trade-offs. Large renewable projects can fragment habitats, intensify competition for water, and create conflicts where land rights are weak. That is why responsible land governance, secure tenure, and full participation of local communities, indigenous peoples, women, youth are non-negotiable. LDN safeguards and integrated land use planning are practical tools to get this right, and they're fully available from a science point of view and from an implementation point of view. Finally, the social benefits are huge if we connect energy, land, and livelihoods. The Achilles heel of sustainable land management and ecosystem restoration has always been overcoming the initial costs. At minimum, renewables bring energy, reducing farm costs. And in best cases, extra energy can be sold, generating income, helping us get over those initial startup costs for doing the right things on our land. Moreover, productive uses of renewable energy, such as solar pumps, cold storage, and local processing, can reduce food loss, increase land use efficiency, help address water needs where it is scarce, and build resilience in rural communities that are highly exposed to drought and land degradation and how they intersect. Because renewables are modular and scalable, they can be tailored to local landscapes and priorities and aligned with national land degradation neutrality targets, nationally determined contributions, and biodiversity strategies. We can do it all at the same time. For many UNCCD country parties, the key message is simple. When done right, the renewable energy transition can support sustainable land management while strengthening food security and livelihoods. With the 17th UNCCD Conference of the Parties, or COP17, set to begin on 17 August, easy to remember, in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, it is time to spotlight the world's rangelands and the pastoralists that make them viable and make people thrive. Land that sustains rural and pastoralist communities can also accommodate well-designed renewable energy systems that support resilience without adding pressure to land or people. The renewable energy transition will reshape our land systems, whether we plan for it or not. If we deliberately apply the LDN response hierarchy and integrated land use planning, renewables can become a driving force for land restoration, water security, and more resilient livelihoods in the world's dry lands and well beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barron. A great amount of diversity of solutions that are available to get it right. With that, I will turn over to Emmanuel from UNU. Emmanuel, please share your perspectives.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan, for the introduction. And also, I would like to use this opportunity on behalf of the United Nations University to thank you and your team for the leadership in producing this report, and also to thank the colleague at the UNCCD. Starting on all existing protocol, it's really a great pleasure for me, particularly because the topic of renewable energy and sustainable land use is very close to my heart. As we have seen in the presentation of Stefan, can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for that. So as you have seen in the presentation of Stefan, the United Nations University has been leading for the past 4 years the installation of 4 agrivoltaic demonstrations in the Gambia and Mali. And as we learned from the presentation, agrivoltaic is basically the production of energy and the cultivation of crops on the same piece of land with the aim to maximize land space, but also to retain soil moisture and also to obtain a high yield from this process. The most common practice or technology of but the United Nations University in our project in Mali and Gambia, we are promoting the triple land use system, whereby we are not only producing energy and food, but also ensuring this rainwater harvesting, taking into consideration that water scarcity it's a major issue in that part of the world. But I would also like to use this opportunity to highlight something that is very important when we talk about new renewable energy and sustainable.
We seem to have lost Emmanuel's feed temporarily. We'll just give a minute for them to return. We trust that their internet will be restored shortly. Stefan, perhaps if we want to invite Jinlei to make an intervention while we hope that Emmanuel's internet comes back to us.
Yes, absolutely. So Jinlei, please share your perspectives from the perspective of IRENA as the main institution dealing with renewable energy.
Thank you very much. First, I would like very much congratulations for launch of this very important analytical report, because From IRENA's perspective, we are, as in the Intergovernmental Organization focused on renewable, we have been receiving all the requests from member states, from stakeholders regarding really what are the exactly interactions between expansion of renewable, if we say for the needed for the energy transition, not only now, but the needed level. If we say tripling the renewable targets in the next 5 years, what exactly the impact can be for environment? This has been what has been shared just now in the presentation, has been provided very good and urgently needed advice to the stakeholders in the energy sector about what we should do, and also clear mapping about what exactly the impact. So this is the first. And from IRENA side, actually, IRENA, we focus on renewable energy. We not only promoting the deployment, but also to secure how can make sure it's sustainable. So one of our work is look at the renewable energy interaction with environment. For example, including the sustainability of biomass, including the solar PV and its environment impact, and also the end-of-life management of renewable technology, but also the circular economy. So I would like to very briefly echo the message what Stefan and Dr. L just shared, that we do also see that the environment impact is an important topic, and there are a lot of policy measures are needed to be shared and to be promoted with countries to help the sustainable deployment. From IRENA, for example, recently, we worked together with IUCN, the largest conservation organization network, and also the China Renewable Energy Engineering Institute, and developed a report on the local environment impact and the benefits of large-scale solar panel. This is also, we look at same, what exactly the interaction between the renewable and the local environment, both negative and positive. One part we have found that is like the negative, like all the human activities, the deployment, the construction of large-scale solar PV not only have the land footprint implication, as Stefan just shared but also they may cause the pollution, fragment to biodiversity and habitat. And they are already, because most of our stakeholders from the energy sector, but if we look at the conservation environment organization, there have been a lot of methodology being developed and adopted by a lot of countries to avoid and minimize the negative part. This one of the most important part is integrating the proper methodology and consideration into the early planning stage, not only solar, but also all of the renewable technology. This is very important to avoid the negative part. But also look at the positive, as Dr. Orr also mentioned that from IRENA, we also checked with some of our member states. We found that the large-scale solar PV, if proper measures are on the position in place, the operation of the solar PV plants can also improve the soil condition, improve the micro environment conditions, such as the reduced temperature and change on the soil conditions, but also vegetation and biodiversity. So there have been a lot of potential to contribute to improve the ecological service, including like not on agrovoltaic, but degradation restoration. But there are also many barriers existing. For example, the cost, for example, the unclear policy. This here, I would like to briefly respond to a little bit the question Stefan you mentioned about the question on how we protect the renewable, how we protect our culture from renewable. So briefly, because we are IRENA, we are working on promoting the renewable deployment. From our perspective, actually, the land use topic and the renewable energy and the relevant and including also the agriculture can be very complex topic. But we would not see is that protect like agriculture from renewable, because there are some discussion, they say the interaction between the two sector, renewable and agriculture, can be very different level. For example, if you look at the global level, the agriculture, one of the largest threats actually is coming from the climate change. And coming from climate change, how we make the agriculture sector, especially in developing countries, more resilient. One of the solution to address the climate change is renewable. This is the most feasible, most important solution. And another part is that to build the resilient agriculture, there are a lot of solutions from renewable to like a solar powered irrigation system to improve the production and also to make it more resilient in developing markets. So it's not just good or bad, it's a mix. And also in terms of the land use need of the renewable technologies and to avoid its threats to the land, to the agriculture sector, I would say especially one of the most discussion topic is bioenergy. So bioenergy has been very clear message that based on all the available solutions, we need to focus on, also highlighted in the presentation, the use of the residue and waste of the biomass for production of the, because most of other part, if feasible, it can be met by electrification. So another part is that actually another part we look at how we can make the agriculture sector become more resilient by integrating the renewable energy development in the planning and in the integrating the policy system is very important. So here I would say policy is very important from national, local level, but also integrated and aligned policy framework to balance the different needs in the context also be very critical. Thank you. I will stop here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jinlei, also for specifically answering the question around the concern around agricultural land. Emmanuel, we lost you, unfortunately, around 4 minutes into your presentation, so I'll hand it back over to you to finish your remarks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan, and sincere apology for that. I don't know what happened with the technology here. It was an internet cut. But maybe just to continue where I stopped, I think I stopped where I talked about that these technology, why they help us to provide the solutions that we are looking, particularly since we are talking about renewable energy and sustainable land use. It is also important for me to highlight the costs that are still very high in some part of the world. Yes, solar panel costs are reducing, but there are other components connected to solar energy, such as the battery, the inverters that are still very high and not affordable in other parts of the world. So that is why in our project, which is a research project, we are not only ensuring the access to energy, but also integrating a business model which can justify a good business case for any investor, or to create economic opportunity locally to take care of operational costs and also to ensure long-term sustainability of this installation. So while reflecting on the report that was jointly produced by UNCCD, IISD, and UNU, I would also like to highlight here that this collaboration is also a recognition that today global crises are deeply interconnected, because the report itself is a joint response to overlapping challenges of climate change, land degradation, and desertification, and also energy poverty. So climate change can accelerate land degradation, and degraded land can undermine livelihood and resilience. And energy poverty can limit sustainable development options, particularly in the dryland and vulnerable region. And maybe just to reflect on the first question you raised, Stefan, on how can we protect agricultural land for renewable energy? I think my answer to the question is that renewable energy can actively support restoration of agricultural land and not to undermine them. And the idea, when we think about the title of the report, which says natural fits, reflects the growing recognition that clean energy and sustainable land management do not need to compete for space or resource. Just of recent, the United Nations University Communication Team published an article on the International Day for Clean Energy, which was on Monday, highlighting 5 facts on how renewable energy can be beneficial in sustainable land management. So a well-designed and implemented renewable energy system, be it solar, wind, bioenergy, or geothermal, can actually work with land rather than against land. So therefore, we should always aim for a well-planned project that can reduce pressure on productive land, improve soil health through practices such as vegetation cover or agro-compatibility design, and support livelihood by creating jobs, diversifying income, but also strengthening local resilience. And to the last question, since I'm also trying to wrap up to have to enable us have enough time for question. The last question is more about what are the biggest mistakes governments can make when expanding renewable energy, and I think this has been well captured in the in the report that was published, whereby it highlights that high risk of silo decision making, where energy, land, and climate policies are developed separately, despite their deep interconnection. It could be a major issue for or a big mistake for government. So the report also called for land-sensitive energy planning that recognizes how renewable energy deployment shapes land use, ecosystem, and livelihood. So to this, the report is recommending three major points, which is 1, embedding renewable energy within strategic land use planning frameworks. The second one is on applying robust environmental and social safeguards. And lastly, ensuring a meaningful community participation from the earliest design stage. I think this is something that we have also heard from the other co-panelists. So one more last thing also to highlight is that renewable energy development should aim for a broader international and national commitment, including the UNCCD land degradation neutrality targets, and also the country's national determined contribution, because these are all opportunities not only to implement national policies, but also to create opportunity for the communities. So I think, Stefan, I will stop here for now, and then wait for any other questions that will come up. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emmanuel. And I think what you said really resonates, right? We have to commit to getting it right, not just expanding renewables as fast as we can, but really making sure that it happens in a way that does not or that creates benefits for everyone. And this also touches on a question that has been asked a couple of times in the chat and in the question and answers here. And thank you for all the participants who have submitted their questions. I think that there's sort of a broad concern on how do we make this transition fair, but within that, sort of a particular concern on how do we make sure that the categorization of land specifically as being degraded does not go against the interest of the people who are benefiting from that land. So really the question is, who determines what is degraded and what needs intervention, and how to choose renewable energy related interventions as an appropriate tool that recognizes the rights of the people living there. So maybe that's the big question, fair transition, and the specific question on how do we ensure safeguarding of land rights. Another question was around financial mechanisms that can help countries get started, or how countries can incentivize, and again, the right solutions in the right places. And then a third question, maybe also relating to that cluster, if there are any criteria to select the appropriate mix of renewable energies in different places. So maybe I'll do one more round among the panelists, and you can choose which questions you might want to answer to. And going back to Barron first again.
Okay, so I'm not fully following. I thought the answers would go into the Q&A, but I'll do one verbally anyway. There's quite a few comments that have been made in the Q&A that have to do with whether or not people will be harmed, right? Large-scale restoration has a reputation, which actually comes many, many years ago and was addressed a long time ago, but nevertheless has a reputation of putting people at risk, people who are living on those lands. And that's a matter of governance, and that's tied to responsible governance. And there's been a huge amount of work in this area from the Food and Agriculture Organization and the Committee on Food Security with the voluntary guidelines on land tenure, those being integrated into land degradation neutrality. And then the key here is that land degradation neutrality is about optimizing what we do where with these concerns in mind. So in the Q&A, I'll put some of the links to this guidance, but the guidance is clearly available to governments, to all nonprofit organizations, CSOs, et cetera, and also the stakeholders on the ground. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Barron. And maybe I'll quickly hand over to Jinlei again. Jinlei, would you be in a position to talk about the financial incentives?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. The financial is can you repeat a little bit the specific perspective of financial?
Yeah, sorry, I don't have the question in front of me right now, but it was about sort of the kind of financial mechanisms that would be available, and maybe also innovative financial mechanisms that can support the renewable energy deployment. And again, always bearing in mind the rest of the discussion that we need to get it right.
So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. I think there are a lot of analytical reports about the financial part for the renewable energy. The first is actually from IRENA side. We see, if you look at the global IRENA, we have one of the analysts is focused on checking the cost of renewable energy compared to other different energy sources. We found that in the last 10 years, actually renewable energy and wind has reduced the significant cost. And last year, the solar and wind electricity, the global levelized cost of the electricity produced from the solar and wind actually is around 30 to 40% cheaper than even the cheapest coal power plants. So it's already more competitive in most of markets in terms of electricity. But we also see the big barriers still for the developing countries is upfront cost, the investment. So especially one of the message we see in another analysis, we see that if you look at the sub-Sahara and some of the developing markets, they receive even less than 5% of global renewable energy investment. And especially one of the key message we proposed is that at some of the developing markets, the public funding actually, especially if they can combine from the green bonds or climate finance, the public funding can play a very important role in the early stage of incentivizing and addressing the high upfront cost issue for developed markets promoting the solar and wind. But also another part is that we have found that the facilitating the investment, global investment from the developed countries to support more the transition in developed markets, especially not on the renewable, but also renewable as a solution for resilient society, and so to provide more local jobs and enhance the local economy. That's a big part. The international community need also to work together with multilateral development banks. Some of that we can see in the Africa, but still need more work to do. This is two of the reflection from my side. I hope we can provide some of the insights. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we don't necessarily need more money in total, but we need to make sure that it goes to the right places in the right moment. We're almost at time, but I wanted to give Emmanuel the floor again. Emmanuel, any reflections on those questions from you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan. And I'm going to keep it very short, just quick to respond to the question. With the first one on financial mechanisms, what we have been encouraging in our project is private investment, because that is an area which has also not been tapped. And one of the major challenge that we have seen talking to private investor is that there are no good business cases to justify their investment. So that is why a large part of the focus of our research is to test the economic viability of such technology like the agrivoltaic in the Gambia. With respect to the second question on what are the best mix, I think this will really depend on the local challenge and the available resources. So it's always good to ground your technology based on the local need and what are the available resources locally. Because we have seen cases whereby technology are installed in remote or rural communities, but when there is a breakdown, it takes so long to replace the breaking parts. So it makes a lot of sense to make use of what is available locally for long-term sustainability. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very important point to think about it from a systemic perspective and not just the individual project. Yeah, we're at time. Thank you so much to the panelists and all the participants. This has been a really, really interesting and very inspiring discussion. We've shared the link to the report several times, and as Matt noted in the beginning, we will share the slides and other information, and also a recording of the session. Maybe I'd also just quickly apologize that we didn't have translation here. We will look into seeing if we can provide translated subtitles for the recording. So if you were not able to understand the presentation in English, we will let you know if we can make that available. But yeah, I will end with just a big thank you, and looking forward to, as you've seen, there's many meetings on the agenda this year. So definitely this discussion will continue and only pick up as we're going along. And I wish you all a very good rest of your day. And again, thank you for joining us today.